This example works with information from two tables, both for East Coast and West Coast states. And we're asked several questions that can be answered using Desmos. So I want to show how to do that in a separate tab. So if you'll go to desmos.com/C, you can quickly get to the Desmos calculator. Now switching back to my screen with the information, what I'm asked for here is the mean of the East Coast states, and I'll be asked also for the median and for the range. So I'm going to type in this information into Desmos, these values into Desmos. So you can see I've started that process here. I typed in the numbers in the list separated by commas. And Desmos is pretty intuitive, so it knows that this is a list, but it tells me that list must be written like this with square brackets. So I'm going to include square brackets in front and behind that list. What it's telling me is just how many elements are in that list. So what I'm going to do is come here in front of the list, and down here at the bottom of the screen you see a keypad, and I can do different functions with this list. And some of those are statistical functions. So I know one of the first things it asks me is for the mean, so I can put mean right here in the front. Notice that it included an extra set of parentheses, so I could have typed it that way as well, but this gives me the mean value, and I'll round to however many places my MyMathLab needs. So rounding, I'll check that answer. Okay, so the next function I need to do is median, and again, like I was mentioning earlier, MyMathLab's kind of intuitive, so you could just try typing the word median. But if you happen to forget, they are located here underneath functions, and then again the statistics tab. And you can see some other ones as well. You might want length or min or max or quartiles and things like that. But for the most part, these are the two that we would use the most often. For the next question, we're asked is the range of the East Coast states. This one I would probably just do using the range definition. Find the maximum value and subtract the minimum value. So looking at the list, the maximum value is 8.49. The minimum value is 0. So 8.49 minus 0 is 8.49. And notice, again, we're asked to do the same thing for the West Coast states. So the only thing I would have to update in that other tab for Desmos is just my list. I would need to type in this new list. In Part B, we're asked to give the 5-number summary and draw the box plot for each of the data sets. These two things kind of work together hand in hand because you need the 5-number summary in order to draw the box plots. Now, some of these values you've already calculated. Like for instance, we already know that the median of the East Coast states was up here, 6.625. And we can quickly see the lowest value and the highest value from the given list. And we could do the rest of this by hand, the lower quartile and the upper quartile, but because I know the box plot is coming, I want to show you how to do that also in Desmos. Okay, so now I'm back in Desmos, and you can see I have now both lists. You have a second line that you can type into. You have a third line, so you can continue making other lists or doing other calculations all on one screen. I removed the words that were in front originally, like mean or median, and I'm now going to replace that with the word box plot. I could type that in here, or if you happen to forget where it's located, again, find the keypad at the bottom of the screen, click on functions, and this time you're doing a distribution, and you want to select box plot. Now immediately it's graphing that box plot over here on the screen. I can do the same thing for the second function just to go ahead and see it. But notice that it graphs on top of the second or the first box plot. So one thing I would have to do is change the offset to a larger number, like say 3, for instance. This one had an offset of 1. This one has now an offset of 3. Another thing Desmos automatically does is exclude the outliers, and I don't want to exclude the outliers. I want to be able to see them, so I'm going to uncheck these boxes. Now notice really here the only thing that changed was the first box plot for the East Coast states. When I exclude the outlier, you can see that outlier is just now a point. When I include the outliers, it draws this long tail to the outlier here. So what this now can do for me is I can estimate or calculate these quartiles. That was what I was left with. And for the East Coast states, what I'm going to do is grab this list here. So just copy and paste into a new line. And I'm going to go to functions, back to stat and quartile in the front. Now it is giving me a caution. So let's see what this particular caution says. It requires 2 arguments. For example, if you want to find the first quartile, notice you have to have the list, and then after the square bracket, put a comma and 1. So that gives us the first quartile. And again, that was for the East Coast states. And I can quickly confirm that here, that the first quartile, where the box starts, is at 6. If I want the third quartile, I can change that 1 to a 3. And again, I can quickly confirm that that is an 8. So coming back to my math lab, the lower quartile was 6, the upper quartile was 8, and then I can now check that answer. And I've already got the graph, so it's pretty easy for me to find the correct graph for the East Coast states. And then we're asked to do this again for the West Coast states. Then the next part of this question asks us to find the standard deviation for each set, the East Coast and the West Coast. So I'm going to turn back to Desmos. I want to copy this list for the East Coast. I'm going to place that in the third line. And in front of that list, I want to find the function that is standard deviation. So here it is abbreviated. Again, I'm underneath the statistics tab in case you didn't notice that there, but I select standard deviation and it immediately tells me the standard deviation. I do the same thing for the West Coast states. I can copy that here into the fourth line. Again, find that abbreviation for standard deviation or type it in, and then I'm going to type these 2 numbers into my math lab. Since this question is specifically asked about what's on the test, I did not include a question like part D on the test, so this video is getting kind of long. I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go on down to part E. Based on your results, compare and discuss the 2 data sets in terms of their center and variation. So here, which of the 2 sets have the higher mean? And we can determine that that's the West Coast states. Again, I could scroll up to the top and compare those 2 values. Therefore, the center of the data is larger for the West Coast states. And then we're also asked to compare standard deviation. So that one's a little bit closer here. I have the standard deviations right here. And the standard deviation for the West Coast states, therefore, was larger. Again, I can just compare quickly those 2 values.